1 and recording episode 601. The man, the myth, the legend, Dr. Roger Hodkinson. It's been far too long since you've been on here, and I do believe we'll get to it in a second. I do believe you kicked the shit out of COVID, but before that, for all of the crazy naysayers listening, please introduce yourself so you can establish your credibility. So it's not just me yelling, but rather a doctor of medicine.
Well, the best way to establish my credibility is for everyone to check me out on Snopes and AP. They'll see that I've been a quack all my life.
Yes.
I call those organizations decomposing maggots. I'm rather proud of my career. I kept my nose clean, never had a complaint against me. I've always been thoroughly evidence-based. I've been recognized by my peers as Citizen of the Year. I've been recognized by my pathology peers as worthy of being president of their provincial association. I've been recognized by the Royal College in Ottawa of being capable of chairing the committee that sets the annual examination for pathology residents to make sure they're safe to be let loose on the public. Yeah, I've done a lot of stuff. I won't bore you with the rest, but one thing I'm not is an expert in any of the subcategories that are relevant to this debate. What is needed, that desperately overdue would be a better description, is a broad-based, head screwed on, ordinary guy like me who can tell the general public what's really going on, as opposed to the narrative that they're being force-fed.
And for everyone listening, Dr. Hodkinson is responsible for one of my original strikes on YouTube, which I am also very proud of. I'm proud to go down in flames with you. And obviously since then, I don't know if we've talked since I got permanently banned from YouTube. It's been a while since we've chatted.
It must be...
well, I'm permanently banned from YouTube now. So
must be 2 months.
Yeah. So all about COVID, permanently banned for that. And but yeah, so let's just jump into it. You overcame COVID.
Yeah. I went naked in the night and was resolutely determined not to go to hospital. Peter McCullough, who I know personally, and my wonderful local GP were my therapeutic team, and they pulled me through. So I've got nothing but gratitude to express to them. Yeah, my age and so on. Yeah, I was a sitting duck. Yeah. And it picked me off, but my recovery is almost over, and I'm a survivor, as the statistics would tend to indicate.
I think, but I'd like to elaborate on it more, right? I'm 31. I had COVID last August when I was 30. I was out of work for about a week, and then I went back and I was fine. Then we look at Joe Rogan, who's 24 years my senior, right? And he beat it in 3 days. He's also in far better shape at 54 than I am at 31. And he did what monoclonal antibodies, ivermectin, and some steroids. But you are you should be dead, right? According to the running narrative, right? You should be dead. You should have died within 3 minutes of getting the first spike protein, right? You should have just exploded. You should have spontaneously combust, and all the grandmas around you die.
You know, even for people of my age, the recovery is 99-point-something%. I mean, you know, most people would get COVID, even in my age group, survive, and often survive despite the absence of early treatment and appropriate treatment when they get to hospital. So the stats are further skewed because of that. If people of my age in nursing homes were treated early, the death rate would be substantially less, as Peter McCullough has suggested, 85% less, as a matter of fact, if they've been given a cocktail of vitamin D, vitamin C, hydroxychloroquine, and ivermectin as per his protocol, which is very similar to Dr. Zelenko's protocol. Not to forget zinc, of course, zinc is the principal.
Yeah.
component, the ivermectin and hydroxychloroquine, help zinc get into cells, which is where it's very protective. So yeah, I mean, the stats are always being distorted, intentionally so, perverse, malicious, often with financial gain in mind, certainly with hospitals in the States. But we can talk about that and the vaccines later.
With the nutraceutical bundle, which is the episode that got me permanently axed from YouTube, was Dr. McCullough saying that everyone should be taking vitamin D, vitamin C, turmeric, quercetin, zinc, and NAC, and which are all the ones I take every day. My mom's on it. I have all my relatives on the nutraceutical bundle now, which if you order online cost around, if you get it at Walmart, it's like $11 a month. If you order online, it can be like $7 a month. But because I can sit here as always, which is the reason why I have physicians on such as yourself, McCullough, Malone, etc., because I can sit here and say this is happening and this is happening, but it really doesn't hold any weight, nor should it, because I'm not a doctor of medicine. I'm not a doctor at all, but I'm certainly not a doctor of medicine. That's a fancy way of saying I'm not a doctor. Well, I'm not a doctor of medicine. I'm not a doctor of anything. But to have you on, and right, then we have Rogan, right, who's I have COVID, and then I'm taking ivermectin, and 3 days later I'm better, right? And he's running circles around Sanjay Gupta on his podcast. Yeah. So I have you, and you've been on here multiple times before. So can you, unless you're bored of describing it, can you describe like what happened? When did you find out you had it? You reached out to Dr. McCullough, who's just an angel fighting demons. What was the chronology? What was the timeline? How did this all unfold? And how did we get to here?
Oh, well, not to take too much time up on this because everyone's, I think, familiar with it. Started off with very slight sore throat, a mild cough, bit of a fever, nothing terribly special. None of those actually got worse. It was principally extreme fatigue and some shortness of breath on exertion. And my PO2 dropped, and it's been climbing ever since, back into normal range. So the symptoms are very non-specific, and took some time to clear up. It was a reasonably severe attack. But as I said, I had fantastic support from Dr. McCullough and my GP here in Devon, who actually gave me some of her own hydroxychloroquine.
Oh yeah.
And made a house call, and that was deeply appreciated.
So you didn't die you didn't instantly die upon taking the hydroxychloroquine and ivermectin? You didn't turn into a horse?
No. Despite taking the dewormer, the industrial scale dewormer. If I may outline the stunning hypocrisy that's going on the treatment side, recognizing I'm not a clinician, I'm a pathologist by training, but I'm fairly well read on many and various aspects of this whole mess, which is, as we say in Britain, if I can use the term and get away with it, you can always edit it out, the biggest cock-up in medical history.
Cock-up?
It is a gigantic cock-up.
I've never heard that term. I've heard clusterfuck.
Look it up. That means you'll get away with it on YouTube.
It doesn't matter. We're not on YouTube.
Okay. Look, here's the point. Here's the big point.
Sure, yeah.
The really big picture stuff, right? On the one hand, they're coercing people to get this clot shot, as I call it, which is still strictly experimental, has never been put through the usual length of clinical trials, has enormous deaths associated with it. And yet they're still pushing it. They're even contemplating, subject to the decision today or tomorrow, even contemplating injecting kids. We'll talk about kids later. So that's on the one hand, a highly experimental drug. It transpires, it doesn't work, and has enormous complications on the one hand. And on the other hand, they are brutally preventing physicians and pharmacists from giving people with early COVID treatment that many believe, and I'm one of them, I believe there's ample documentation for when you go to hospital, they think you got COVID, but you're not bad enough to be admitted. They're still not giving people the go home cocktail with vitamin D, C. There are others, as you've mentioned, but the main ones are vitamin D, vitamin C, and hydroxychloroquine and or ivermectin. They're still not doing that, despite the fact that all those agents have had decades of use and have been shown to be totally safe. Some exotic, very, very rare complications, but nowhere close to the risk associated with using them as opposed to the risk of getting the clot shot. So the hypocrisy is absolutely stunning. You know, what we don't do in clinical medicine is when we got a desperately sick person in front of us, we don't say, oh, sorry, really can't treat you because you see, there isn't a randomized clinical trial yet that could help you. And therefore, why don't you just go home and come back when you're blue? That's what we're saying to these people. It's despicable. It's medical malpractice of the highest order, sanctioned by government and all the colleges of physicians and surgeons across the Western world. It's otherwise known as state-sanctioned murder, and it shows no signs of abating. But the hypocrisy is the underpinning thing. It is stunning, it is gigantic, and it's having enormous consequences, otherwise known as death.
It's like what McCullough said in his testimony. He said that what's happening right now is it's the antithesis of what it is to be a doctor. He said, you're a doctor, right? You got into med school, you got your MD, you did your residency, your fellowship, you've practiced, you're a physician, you know, and I'll put words in his mouth. You're smarter than the average person. None of them will say it, but I'll say it. You're smarter than the average person. You have these skills, right? You know that it's like what General Mattis said in Bing West, who wrote his book Chaos, Call Sign Chaos, about, for example, taking Baghdad. You tell the men under you and the men under them and the men under them what the general prerogative is. We're going to secure this city. Now you can have all these plans. You're going to cross that bridge. We're going to go across this river. You guys are going to parachute in. But as Mike Tyson said, everyone has a plan until you get punched in the face. The importance of everyone understanding, and this is Mattis, the importance of everyone understanding what the end goal is when things pop up, like the bridge is blown apart, or the river is full of mines, or there's anti-aircraft fire and you can't parachute, is all these individuals who, like doctors, they have gone through their training, they know what to do. These guys are the best at what they do. They can maneuver, they can deviate from the plan, or as General Patton said, if we really want to go into the historical behemoths of war, never tell someone what to, or never tell someone how to do something. Tell them what to do and let them surprise you with their ingenuity. Just get it done, and they'll find a way to get it done, right? Like the free market.
The essence of medical training and medical practice is called the exercise of judgment.
Yeah.
Wisdom, if you like. People never present as textbook cases of anything, whether it's gallbladder disease or whatever, you name it.
Yeah.
It's always a matter of judgment as to what they might have, and then the investigations and so on. And then, as I used to tell medical students, you hold the evidence at arm's length. You half close your eyes and you decide if you've got enough to prioritize the diagnosis in terms of likely order of prevalence. That's been taken away from us with this particular sad episode in medical history, where physicians are not being allowed to use their judgment for their patient that's in front of them right now, and instead being expected to follow the edicts of people who have, most of them have never treated a patient in their lives. Many of them are bureaucrats and politicians, union leaders, CEOs of large companies, who, by denying people treatment, insisting on vaccination, they, excuse me, they are practicing medicine. You can't practice medicine unless you've been registered as appropriately trained by the regulatory bodies. And yet this is going on willy-nilly across the world. Billions of people are being treated by charlatans who don't know when to stop doing something that's so manifestly wrong in so many ways. They continue doing the same thing over and over and over again. Let's just take, for example, these so-called booster shots, right? Listen, if any bureaucrats listening to this without their blood pressure going through the roof, which it should, because you're responsible for killing people. We need professional latitude here to treat people that right now who are terribly sick. And you should get out of our face, leave us alone, and let us practice medicine. Politics playing medicine is a very dangerous game. That's what's got us into this mess. This particular virus, an mRNA virus, mutates all the time. We could have predicted that, nothing new. But there's one central dogma in vaccinology that's been contravened, knowingly, presumably, because it's dogma. And that is, you never, ever, ever, underlined in neon, start a mass vaccination program right in the middle of a pandemic. You don't do that. You prepare people beforehand with vaccinations, because by starting a vaccination program right in the middle of a pandemic, you progressively encourage the emergence of variants, mutations that are occurring all the time. And so the bottom line is you can never get ahead of an mRNA virus, ever. Totally impossible, unless you weld everyone into their homes like some Chinese were. No, you just can't do it. You have to learn to accommodate to it in practical ways that the Great Barrington Declaration discussed. If they'd done that back in 2019, this would have been a 2-3 month episode. Herd immunity would have developed very quickly, and there would have been no need for lockdowns and travel bans and vaccine passports at all. That's what they should still do. Tough love, take the dogs off, just let it go. Advise people about taking vitamin D, give people early treatment if they happen to succumb to it. But let's get it over with and stop this charade of talking about COVID-0. It's a concept that would only come out of the mouths of lunatics running an asylum. It can't happen. Therefore, if it's failed so often, 1 mass today, 10 tomorrow, as Fauci was saying. Oh, by the way, isn't it delicious that he's been caught with his pants down?
The dog.
The NIH itself has now said that indeed what you were doing, five-finger Fauci, was gain of function.
Yeah.
You need a get out of jail free card.
Yeah.
Because we're coming for you.
That the dog trials coming out about the beagles, which they would remove the vocal cords from so they couldn't bark, so that the researchers wouldn't have to listen to them howl as they put them in they put their heads in mesh tanks and had them eaten alive by sandflies, with what we're talking about is, well, one, I've heard that again and again from you, Malone, McCullough. You never vaccinate during a pandemic because you're speeding up the evolution process. You're
That's
driving
the
natural
single,
selection.
that's the single thing they did, the biggest thing they did wrong, thinking that they could go against dogma and get away with it. Instead, they made a bad situation infinitely worse.
It's like if you didn't, it would be like if video chatting was a pandemic, like what we're doing right now. The pandemic, the coronavirus introduced, you introduced coronavirus while we're still creating FaceTime and Skype. You accelerated video chatting from Facebook Messenger to Instagram to Zoom to everything. Our bandwidth went through the roof because we all had to do video chatting. You accelerated video chatting, right? You accelerate the creation of IEDs in the Middle East, right? You go from they just use landmines to, well, we have things that detect landmines. So now you'd make really elaborate IEDs. Well, then we started using these big MRAPs, and they had these almost look like giant like rakes, but just industrial size. And they would reach out in front like 20 feet and they would trip the bombs. Well, so then Al Qaeda started making bombs that had a trigger, and 20 feet behind it was a bomb. So by the time it was triggered, the bomb was over the. You accelerate these forms of ingenuity, which back to Patton and Mattis and kind of what McCullough was saying is, well, back to what McCullough was saying is, you, like you said, you have the judgment, do what you need to do. Okay, we don't know what this is, right? If I come in and, right, you can learn everything in the textbook, but the person that you see coming into the emergency room at 2:30 in the morning is probably going to be something you didn't see. What happened? His arm got caught in a subway and it ripped it off, and now he's bleeding from here, but he also has this illness, so we got to take that into consideration, and he's allergic to this. Like, you don't learn that. What you do learn is a set of skills, and you tackle it in the best way that you can, right? I interview authors all the time. I don't have a set of questions. What I do is I read the book several times and I come in guns blazing, ready to, each person I have to take apart differently. And McCullough is saying that they robbed that from you. They said, don't treat them, send them home, which, if that's not evil enough, well, then you also have to look at, well, what's the other side effect of it? Is there any what are the malicious forces in it? Well, by not treating, that means you're also not using these generic medications. And if no one's using generic medications, then that means we can use an EUA. And what a coincidence, we can break in record-breaking profits. There is a direct monetary reason for the 700,000 deaths in the United States. It's directly related to money, which, surprise, surprise, is the root of it all. I've said it before. It's going to unfold in the coming years, and it's going to be the single biggest story of our lifetimes.
Yeah, absolutely. The biggest cock up ever.
It's yeah. And it's, well, I would say it's not even that, because that implies that they're incompetent, that they messed up, they slipped on the banana peel. No, they knew exactly what they were doing.
All right. Well, actually, Tommy, I disagree with you on that.
All right.
Occam's razor comes into play.
Sure.
Look no further than something that we know is definitely present, as opposed to maybe the explanation.
Incompetence.
We know that politicians are fucking stupid.
Okay. That's fair. That's fair.
Razor.
Counterpoint, you could use Occam's razor and say money is often the root of all this shit.
Yes, but first of all, you have to prove that there's
fair. All right. Touche.
Prove that there's intent.
Touche.
What we have ample proof of is political stupidity.
Yeah.
And around the world, the very same day, everyone copied everyone else. There wasn't a plan in the top right-hand drawer of his or her desk.
Yeah.
That would be ludicrous to think it was so coordinated, and a whistleblower would have said so.
Yeah.
No, they were just totally devoid of any serious medical understanding of what was going on, and how previous things such as masks and social distancing and travel bans and lockdowns did not work, could not work. No evidence in the medical literature for them, no consensus. But they wanted to be the brave macho guys that will protect you from everything from cradle to grave.
Mm-hmm.
And so believe me, we're doing it for you. We are doing it for you. And so they packed themselves into this corner of 1 mask, 10 masks, booster shots, etc., etc., etc. They don't have the macho to actually say, I was wrong. How can Boris Johnson, I mean, that was a beautiful cameo, wasn't it? Where he summarized the reality of the vaccination, where he said, it was said in the vernacular, the vaccination doesn't stop you getting it and doesn't stop you passing it on. Exactly, exactly. Out of the mouths of babes, and I use the term advisedly, ignorant people. Sometimes, you know, that famous saying, there's many a slip twixt the cup and the lip. Yes, Prime Minister, you nailed it.
Yeah.
You nailed it. Because what you nailed was the absurdity of vaccination, regardless of all the other issues of how many people it's killing, because it doesn't work. It does not work, quite apart from killing people. So tell me, Mr. Johnson, why in God's name are you still pushing it? And even now, we'll talk about this in a minute, even now, considering using it on our treasured asset, our children.
Yeah, I was going to say, just today, the booster shots for Moderna and what was the other one? BioNTech, maybe? Is that no, because we have the Pfizer boosters. The other, Moderna, and what the hell are the other ones? I don't pay attention.
Pfizer, J&J.
We have the Pfizer BioNTech, so maybe it's J&J and Moderna. Those booster shots
I don't distinguish between any of them.
They're all bullshit. Yeah,
they're all poisons.
So those got passed today, and then this week, the CDC is expected to sign off on giving it to kids age 5 through 11.
Right. That's absolutely unconscionable. The way I describe it is this, just to put a fine point on it. Has it really come to this? Child sacrifice to appease the new gods, otherwise known as our so-called elected representatives. Has it really come to that?
In a way,
because,
yeah.
You know, the Aztecs found that throwing children on the pyre did not make the rain fall. You know, just look at history, please, for throwing children on the fire. It doesn't change things one bit. Vaccinating children will not protect granny in the nursing home, period. Not only that, but it's now, as it's becoming very clear from data, particularly from Israel and Britain, that it's the vaccinated who are now the lepers. They are the ones spreading the disease. And even worse, being asymptomatic while they're spreading. We've got to distinguish here. There was never any asymptomatic spread from children in classrooms to teachers. That was in terms of the infection, all right? That in unvaccinated people, that simply didn't happen. The teachers' unions, of course, milked it so they could all stay at home and have a fat salary while everyone else was hemorrhaging. The reality of transmission post-vaccination is quite different, because many of these people will be asymptomatic and still spreading the disease to the unvaccinated who've been smart enough to realize that this stuff's bloody dangerous and I'm not going to take it even if I lose my job. So it's a total reversal of the risks and the exposure. It's the vaccinated who are now the problem. And indeed, it's the vaccinated that should be scared of the winter and what's going to happen if they get re-exposed to COVID with the ADE phenomenon, which is now getting very carefully dissected, with work coming out showing why people who've been vaccinated are vulnerable, why their immune system is suppressed. That's getting much better defined now. So, you know, if I'd been vaccinated and I'd not had a thrombotic event from the clot shot, you're still not out of the woods, I'm afraid. What this winter dishes up is anyone's guess. And I hope it doesn't happen. But there could be a tsunami of COVID infections in the vaccinated, because this thing will continue to mutate beyond Delta. There'll be another version that's even more dangerous. because the mRNA vaccine was never intended to protect against anything other than the spike protein of the Wuhan version.
And I want to touch on ADE and yeah, the vaccinated spreading it, but I do need to go turn down my air conditioner because it's so cold in here. Dr. Hodkinson, can you monologue for like 60 seconds?
Sure.
Thank you. I'm freezing my ass off because I close the doors so that I don't get echoes from like the kitchen and stuff because I have sound panels in here. And so I always turn down the air conditioner because there's no circulation. I turned it down too low. I was sitting here and I was like,
While you were hugging your coat.
yeah, I'm normally I'm not, but I was just sitting here. I was like, it's really fucking cold. But so ADE, can you explain what that is and why it is that? Because I've heard it several times before now, kind of just in the, I guess the ether, the norm, the cultural norms of ADE and the winter. I mean, I've heard the danger of the vaccinated spreading it because they think they're protected, so now they're waltzing around, and in fact they are not. And so we've heard that before, but I have yet to have someone on to touch on ADE and honestly explain what it is and why the winter, for all future listeners, today is Monday, October 25th, 2021, why the coming winter is going to be so potentially dangerous.
Well, there's a couple of reasons. The first one is that post-vaccination, your immune system is suppressed. How long it's been suppressed for, we don't know. But because of the massive attention that your immune system gives to a huge number of spike protein molecules, which the density of concentration of which one can't predict ahead of time, how in any one individual respond to a standard dose of the mRNA. So that's the first point. The first point is that vaccination is COVID vaccination is an immune suppressant. That's why people are seeing recurrence of shingles. That's why we believe the emergence of an increased number of cancers, because the immune system keeps very small cancers under control, or even established cancers under control. So that's the first point. There's general immune suppression because of the massive diversion of attention in a totally unnatural way to one particular invader, the spike protein. The other element of that is that the spike protein itself is not the spike protein that's currently present in the Delta variant. It's different. And so the immune response to the Wuhan version, which is what's in the vaccine, is not going to give you the protection against COVID or yet another mutation that follows on. It's furthermore, it gets a bit technical, but the type of antibodies that are being produced post-vaccination are not the ones against the nuclear capsid the rest of the virus, they're directed against only one element of it, the spike protein. So it's not the broad-based immunity that you get from having the natural infection. So there's a multitude of reasons why the vaccinated are at risk this fall of getting COVID, their immune system's being suppressed, and they're just not prepared with the immune response that they had. That's not preparing them for re-exposure to Delta or some other version that will still emerge.
So the vaccine, it targets the spike proteins, which seems to be the thing that's mutating most wildly and speedily, as opposed to the body itself is evolutionarily conserved. Is that the right term?
Yes, we have natural infection, natural immunity.
Yeah.
We've all had coughs and colds over the years, and that's been quite sufficient to keep the majority of us infection free. I saw a very interesting video the other day about the Amish people who live very secluded lives and don't believe in all this bullshit. And, you know, they may have some strange ideas, but this one was rather brilliant. They decided basically to do nothing except be rather careful about the chalice that was being circulated in church with the diluted wine. That seems to be all they did. And they had a short burst of COVID going through the community, and that ended. And now they're just living life normally, and everything seems to be perfectly okay. That's what not just the Amish should have done. You know, ignorant of medicine, but brilliant in terms of having common sense and being critical thinkers. That's what society should have done internationally. We should have accepted this as just like we did years ago with a bad flu. Gee, it's tough. Some get it, some don't. I go home, I get chicken noodle soup from my wife, who then gets it, and the kids get it, and everyone gets better. And hey, it's all over with, you know. And we decide if we're going to go back to work. No involvement of the state, no lockdowns, no nothing. At the same time, protecting Granny in the nursing home in ways that are very well known. None of that happened.
Yeah, I mean, I always see it. Same thing. Me or my three brothers, someone would get sick. We'd all get sick. Mom and dad would get sick. And if anyone was sick and we happened to be going to visit grandma and grandpa this weekend, well, maybe we're not doing it this weekend.
Politicians have to understand that you and me, we're pragmatic, ordinary people when it comes to, you know, not coughing on people intentionally when we have
just manners.
You know, we stay at home, we don't go to work, no one had to tell us anything, and we decided when we go back to work with no tests involved or anything, that was all that was needed. And they thought they'd be super clever. Well, this has a way of making you humble, doesn't it?
Yeah.
The law of unintended consequences. Some of them were very predictable, but to introduce something so wildly different, messing around with an impeccable immune system, expect problems. And that's coming out of the woodwork everywhere now.
Yeah. I mean, yeah, even in college, it was just kind of like, hey, I'm sick. And it was like, so if we're all smoking pot, it's like, I won't smoke because I'm going to get you guys sick. Or if it's like, hey, I'm up in my room, I'm really fucking sick this weekend. Like, just leave the door closed. I'm just in here doing my thing. Just, there was no, well, what are the sanctioned rules? It was just, maybe we shouldn't drink out of like the same bottle of liquor. Even just simple stuff, right? It was no, but you just knew that, right? Oh, hey, I'm sick. Don't drink out of that. Oh, my bad. You know, simple things like that. And, you know, it's like right after 9/11, the color coding, the and everyone was, we got to do this, you got to do that, and eventually a couple of years go by, and everyone's just like, yeah, no, fuck this. If it happens, it's terrible, and it's gonna happen. But just you got to live your life, but I don't see the common sense ruling. I don't see people. I don't see us going, hey, this has all been a cock up. Let's just get back to life. I think what's probably going to happen, and I hope I'm wrong, but I think what's probably going to happen is you're going to see new vaccines rolled out for the next variant, the next big one. There's the Omicron variant. This is 100 times worse than Delta.
When is it going to stop, you idiots?
It's never going
Jab,
to
jab,
stop.
jab, 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 jab. Is it going to be
Money,
every
money,
3
money,
months for the rest
money,
of our
money, 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 money,
and
money.
each jab exposes you to the clot shot
Mm-hmm.
in exactly the same way as all the other ones, all totally unnecessary. It's like, the flu vaccine. The vaccine for the flu is always for last year's flu. They can't
Yeah,
crank out a bit fast enough for this year's flu,
yeah,
right? This even if this thing mRNA vaccine worked perfectly, it's for yesterday's virus.
yeah. It's
Knock, 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 knock.
it's this
It's
charger
not.
for a new
It's not.
battery.
It's not working.
Doesn't work.
Does everyone get that? It is not working. How much evidence do you need to stop the idiocy of coercing people under pain of losing their job, their educational opportunities, a year in school? How obvious does it have to be for you clowns putting all these mandates in place which have no consensus in the medical literature? It's simply idiotic. And it's been shown not to work. Nothing works. Nothing. Mass, social distancing, travel bans, lockdowns, vaccines. None of it works. So stop the madness now. Go through a period when people, unfortunately, are going to get this disease in large numbers. Get it over with and move on. Open up society. Are we going to shut down the global economy every year to protect granny in the nursing home? Are we going to demand vaccine passports for someone who has to have the 10th booster jab? Otherwise, we're going to weld you in your home. No, this is all absolute insanity. Absolute insanity. And I might say about vaccine passports, one big put down. So imagine I'm talking to a politician now. And I say to them, okay, so you want vaccine passports, do you? For COVID, all right. So what's coming next? Are you going to insist that everyone who's HIV positive has a big X tattoo on their forehead? Is that what you have in mind? Because I don't think you get away with that.
What about herpes?
I don't think you get away with that either. So why don't you just back off, recognize that you're not doing anything to save people, but what you are doing is intruding into everyone's personal lives in which you have no goddamn purpose to do so or reason to do so. So back off, leave us alone, let us live our lives normally, let us stumble into COVID, unfortunately, and get over it because we're getting early treatment. The solution is glaringly obvious, while we're also protecting granny in the nursing home with well-known measures. There is no need for this, and particularly to even think of, even contemplate vaccinating children. That's the most revolting idea. They're not dying of this. They don't get it. If they do, they slough it off in no time. And so for a segment of society that's never going to get into trouble with COVID, we're subjecting them en masse to the risk of all these thrombotic events and myocarditis in particular for the males in that group. By the way, the males in that group are probably getting myocarditis as opposed to females. There could be other explanations, but just think about it generally. It's the young athletic males out there that vastly outnumber young athletic females. And they're living an incredibly healthy life. And their immune systems are vibrant. They're just ready to go. And it's not really surprising, in my opinion, that it's the young males who are getting myocarditis, because their immune system will just be cranking out gallons of spike protein to damage other organs.
I think when we look at things like there won't be common sense, instead there will just be a new round of vaccines for the Omicron variant or the Theta variant, which will happen. And as you said, the solution is glaringly obvious. Just let it happen and it will play out the way it has for billions of years.
Right.
That is where I think my Occam's razor maybe has a little more viability. If the solution is so obvious
I agree.
and we're not going back, well, what's the one thing that this is so stupid? Why are we doing it? Well, a couple of corporations are literally making record breaking profits quarter after quarter after quarter, and they're
Yeah.
lobbying, and they have been for decades. If nothing makes sense and we keep doing it, and the only thing different is, well, that guy is just making money hand over fist, maybe this has something to do with that guy. So whereas I would agree with you, probably the incompetence is what led to this. If this keeps going, it's money. There's no other, it's money. Now, if these corporations were barred from making profit, I think we would eventually kind of stop doing this because we'd be like, what are we doing?
Well, not so much profit. Profits, I'm a rabid free marketer. Profit's okay, but you don't make profit out of a dangerous product that you know is untested.
Well, that's what I mean.
The reason why everyone's pushing this is that no one has. They've been given blanket immunity, haven't they? And even physicians are being given, so to speak, immunity because they're obeying the diktats of their colleges, who, in my opinion, are practicing medical malpractice by failing to demand of government, why are you doing this? It is killing people. It's called medical malpractice, and we demand an answer. They're not doing that. So if I may borrow a phrase from Hunter Biden, everyone will be using deniable plausibility.
Yeah.
What it wasn't studied, we didn't know, we were told not to even think about it, etc., etc., etc. But excuse me, there's actually a swastika on the door next door, and they're Jewish people, and they're being hauled out in the middle of the night. Did you notice that? It's like 1938 all over again. Everyone doesn't want to know. To this day, there is no thorough random checking of the adverse events.
Yeah. It's
not happening. Don't you think, any policymaker listening, don't you think that if you're introducing something on such a scale with so much danger and actual reporting of cumulative deaths that exceed all the deaths of all vaccines over the last 30 years, don't you think you should put in place some monitoring system, something that really delves down into whether this event was due to the vaccination or not? Don't you think you are obligated to do that instead of just having your head in the sand and hoping it'll all go away? Well, it won't go away. And when the history of this is written and elections happen, there'll be blood in the gutter. Reputations will be slaughtered because the general public has been duped by all the levels that they would normally go to for information, whether it's politics, the media, social media, physicians. They've all been hoodwinked. And I think when people realize that, come 24, well, certainly 22, down in the States, when that gets articulated in lay language, when the autopsies, as I call it, when the autopsies are written and distributed, and Amazon can't stop it because Martin Luther discovered that the basement printing press is a very effective way of getting information out there. No, and as a consequence of all of this, it's not just, a good reason to get Trump back in again. I'll come to Trump in a minute. We really have to think of the the societal aspects of all of this, about the kids losing a year of non-verbal communication and all the devastation that's come out of lockdowns. With respect to Trump, Trump was deceived maliciously and intentionally by Fauci. Fauci was the first man on this planet who realized what was going on, that he was responsible for this escape. And he's twisted and turned and used every device in the book to try to minimize that by methods that are guaranteed to fail. And they did fail. He's responsible. One man is responsible for such intellectual arrogance as to think that you can give a highly dangerous experiment to a lab with a terrible biosafety record and get away with it. It was a statistical game. It probably wouldn't happen, but it did. And then he's trying to save his skin, and not very effectively, given the NIH's statement about, sorry fella, but actually it was gain of function. You know, in a normal world, that man would go straight to jail. He's the most vile man alive.
Why do you think the NIH is suddenly seemingly turn on him? Why wouldn't they have said this once in the last 18 months? Is there a sea change going on inside the NIH? Is it a power faction struggle?
Who knows? But maybe the writing's on the wall and get out now.
Maybe someone was offered immunity and they were like,
Get
fuck
out
it.
now, because it's a house of cards. It's all going to come falling down on Fauci. And if the Republicans take control of the House next year, with a new House leader, Speaker, watch out, Fauci. A criminal investigation is merely the start of it.
It seems to be slowly seeping into the public consciousness more. I mean, right? Joe Rogan kind of just schooling Sanjay Gupta and talking about, why would these things not be allowed? Well, there's a huge profit motive. And what did Fauci know? It seems to be that the threads are starting to get tugged on. And, they kind of, as Joe Rogan said so eloquently a couple days ago, they came after me and blatantly lied about me, someone who has 10 times the viewership of you. How stupid or how fucking stupid can you be? Or whatever his quote was, you dumb motherfuckers. I think that was the quote. You dumb motherfucker. He has 10 times the viewership of them. And they came after the wrong guy. And I think Rogan's starting to see what this is. And Rogan has 4 daughters. And he's probably looking at, what world am I leaving? And he's starting to speak up. He's normally always played centrist pretty consistently over the last decade. He seems to be starting to go full, battle mode. And I think he has to. I think it's to an extent his responsibility. He has the biggest platform, and he has now been directly affected by it, right?
Well, and you want to get ahead of the story, don't you? I mean, it's obviously collapsing.
Yeah.
And Boris Johnson, out of the mouths of babes, you couldn't wish for a more devastating statement, so concisely put, to totally undermine the whole concept of vaccine passports, and by that, vaccination.
Yeah.
It doesn't work. It doesn't protect you. It means that you can now spread it to the very people that you were concerned about.
Thinking you're protecting.
It's a total reversal of the logic.
Yeah. And that does seem to be another aspect of it. More mainstream YouTube channels are starting to cover it. Well, not YouTube channels because they'll get banned. Podcasts, that in the millions of followers. Stephen Crowder, Tim Pool. It seems that they see the story happening and they want to get on board.
Tommy, the vaccination programs internationally have been basically managed by psychologists, how to drive fear.
Oh yeah.
Methodically, repetitively.
Oh yeah.
Cranking it up all the time. How to drive fear. Well, look what's coming down the pike. The vast majority of people who got vaccinated were just ignorant of the risks. They were coerced. They just did it because it was just another vaccine, whatever.
They were fooled. They were taken advantage of.
They were taken advantage of. So what's the mainstream media going to do? How are they going to position this to make the vaccinated aware of how they are spreading it and how they are personally at risk for potential serious outcomes with re-exposure this year or next? They want to retain their viewership, don't they? They don't want to have people scurrying off scared of their own shadow, but people should be informed about the personal consequences to them for being vaccinated, not to make them feel stupid, but to energize them into rejecting the politicians who are responsible for all of this.
Yeah.
But that's a very fine line to walk, isn't it? If you're a major newspaper or mainstream media.
Yeah, I don't fault anyone for getting it. I think a lot of people just they thought they were doing the right. They thought they were protecting other people, and it's a noble intent,
Well,
right?
no, Tommy. Never in medicine do we advocate getting vaccinated to protect other people.
I'm not
We
saying it
get
was
vaccinated
moral.
to protect ourselves. And
I'm
that may have a knock-on benefit for other people, but that's the primary motive. It always has been.
Yeah. Yeah. What I'm saying is I think a lot of good people were taken advantage of. A lot of my
Absolutely.
family, a lot of my extended family, all great, wonderful, respectful, loving people. A lot of them got it because they're like, hey, I've got an uncle who's old and who's at risk. A lot of them did do it because they thought they were doing it for others.
Let me give you, just before we close,
Yeah.
so a very interesting straw poll that I've done on 4 separate occasions before I got sick with COVID. Because you can't rely on any statistics that they're putting out, but you can do your own straw polls to give a sense of it and then see if it's repeated here and there. So this is the question that I asked to 500 people in 4 different occasions. I said, would everyone here please put up their hand if you're aware of anyone in your immediate acquaintance who's had a heart attack, a stroke, or a pulmonary embolus after vaccination. Not just a sore arm, but something that could have killed them and maybe did kill them. Could you please put up your hand? I wasn't prepared for the response on the first occasion. It was fully 1/3 of the people there. It was the same percentage, roughly, for the other 3 separate occasions. So clearly, there's a vast amount of death and disability. So you don't die, okay, you just have a stroke. Translation, you can't drive anymore, you can't write, you're mentally impaired. Heart attack, you get congestive heart failure. Pulmonary embolus, you're always sitting on a powder keg for the next one. The volume of those near-death experiences, I suspect, just from these straw polls, is vastly, vastly underestimated.
Yeah. I think that's going to be another tipping point is when they're not going to be able to hold back the floodgates and the real numbers are going to start coming out.
Yeah.
I think it's going to melt people's brains. And I think as soon as the tide starts to turn, it's over because it's just momentum and it's going to come crashing down.
Absolutely.
And you can't keep the lie going forever. The Soviet Union did a pretty good job at censoring for like 70 years. Eventually the whole thing breaks apart. It just gets ripped to pieces. It's like a vault full of classified material getting hit by a tornado. Eventually it's all flying around and everyone can see it. I think that's what's coming. And
yeah, we're not at the tipping point yet, but the
not
likes
yet.
of Alex Berenson must, I don't know this for sure, but he must be writing the autopsy right now.
Yeah. It's, I look at it as this though, and I'm happy they are all the kind of bigger mainstream channels and podcasts and platforms that are starting to kind of cover all the fuckery going along around it. You and I have been doing this since February, and there are videos of us doing it, and there's timestamps with dates. So in the future, we can look back and go, we were doing it before it was cool. We were banned from YouTube for it, right? It's so everyone that's hopping on now, and I'm glad, I'll take it. I don't care. But eventually,
no, you've been a pleasure to give me. It's been a pleasure to have access to your show. I love your youth, your vitality, your irreverence, and I wish you Godspeed with your podcast. You're hitting the right notes, Tommy.
thank you, Roger. And it's there's no one I'd rather go down in flames with than you. I like getting banned, and you help me get banned, and there's no one I'd rather do it with, because if I think it's, who is it, Charlie Brown? What was the quote? If it can be destroyed by the truth, it deserves to be destroyed by the truth. If it can, man, fucking burn it down. But
you cannot suppress the truth. You can try your damnedest, but by one means or another, and the time frame is uncertain, but the truth always comes out.
Much like COVID, you can't lock down everything. Eventually, one molecule gets out, and then it spreads, and that's what it is. Dr. Hodkinson, always a pleasure, and we'll have to do the next one sooner rather than later so we can get back on our regular schedule. I'm glad that you kicked the shit out of COVID, and thank you so much for coming on here. And until next time, thank you so much, sir.
The pleasure's mine, Tommy.
All right, my man. Godspeed. God bless. God bless America, everybody.